The brain is one of the first organs affected by blood sugar imbalance. When people think about blood sugar problems, they usually think about diabetes, weight gain, or fatigue. But one of the most sensitive organs affected by unstable blood sugar is actually the brain. The brain consumes a remarkable amount of energy. Even though it represents only a small percentage of body weight, it uses roughly 20% of the body's glucose supply at rest. That means the brain depends on a very stable energy environment to function properly. When blood sugar repeatedly rises too high or drops too low, the brain is often one of the first systems to feel the effects. What makes this concerning is that the early warning signs are rarely dramatic. In most cases, the symptoms develop quietly. They may appear as small changes in mental clarity, mood, memory, or concentration. Because these signals are subtle, many people attribute them to stress, aging, or lack of sleep. However, research over the past decade has shown that chronic blood sugar instability can influence several important processes inside the brain. High glucose levels can increase oxidative stress in brain cells. Repeated insulin spikes can affect how neurons regulate energy. Over time, this metabolic stress may influence inflammation, blood vessel health, and even communication between nerve cells. This does not mean that every fluctuation in blood sugar causes damage. The human body is very resilient. But when glucose levels remain unstable for long periods, the brain may begin sending quiet signals that something is not functioning as smoothly as it should. Recognizing these signals early is important because they often appear long before a medical diagnosis is made. Silent sign 1. Increasing brain fog and slower thinking. One of the earliest signs that blood sugar instability may be affecting the brain is something many people describe as brain fog. Brain fog is not a medical diagnosis, but it is a useful way to describe a very real experience. It often feels like mental sluggishness. Thoughts may take longer to organize. Concentration may fade more quickly than usual. Tasks that once felt automatic may suddenly require more effort. To understand why this happens, we need to look at how the brain uses glucose. Neurons rely heavily on a stable supply of energy. Unlike many other tissues in the body, the brain cannot store large reserves of fuel. It depends on a steady delivery of glucose through the bloodstream. When blood sugar rises sharply after meals and then falls quickly afterward, the brain experiences a cycle of energy spikes followed by temporary shortages. During the spike phase, excessive glucose can increase oxidative stress inside brain cells. During the drop phase, neurons may not receive enough energy to maintain optimal signaling. This instability can affect the way neurons communicate with each other. Chemical messengers known as neurotransmitters rely on adequate energy supply. When glucose delivery becomes inconsistent, neurotransmitter balance can shift. This may influence attention, memory processing, and overall mental clarity. Another factor involves insulin. Many people think insulin works only in the muscles and liver, but insulin also plays an important role in the brain. It helps regulate how neurons use energy and how certain brain circuits process information. When insulin signaling becomes impaired due to chronic blood sugar spikes, some researchers believe this may contribute to slower cognitive processing. This does not mean occasional brain fog is automatically related to blood sugar. Sleep deprivation, stress, and dehydration can all produce similar sensations. However, when mental fog appears regularly, especially after meals high in refined carbohydrates or sugar, it may indicate that glucose regulation is becoming less stable. Silent sign 2. Sudden mood changes and irritability, another subtle signal that blood sugar may be affecting the brain, appears in emotional regulation. Many people notice periods of irritability, restlessness, or unexpected mood swings during the day. So these changes are often blamed on stress, lack of sleep, or a demanding schedule. While those factors can certainly play a role, fluctuations in blood glucose can also influence how the brain manages mood. The brain relies on a steady supply of energy to maintain balance in neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine. These chemical messengers are responsible for regulating mood, motivation, and emotional stability. When blood sugar rises rapidly after a meal and then drops quickly afterward, the brain may experience a short period of reduced energy availability. This drop can trigger the release of stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones help raise blood sugar again by signaling the liver to release stored glucose. While this mechanism protects the body from dangerously low blood sugar, It can also create noticeable emotional effects. Adrenaline increases alertness, but may also produce feelings of tension or irritability. Cortisol can temporarily sharpen focus, but repeated elevations may contribute to anxiety or emotional volatility. As a result, some people experience a pattern where they feel energized shortly after eating, followed by irritability or mental fatigue a few hours later. Over time, repeated cycles of glucose spikes and drops can influence the brain's ability to regulate mood smoothly. This does not mean that occasional irritability is always related to blood sugar. Emotions are influenced by many factors. However, when mood shifts frequently appear alongside hunger, fatigue, or mental fog, blood sugar instability may be part of the picture. Silent sign 3. Subtle memory lapses and difficulty concentrating. Another quiet signal that blood sugar instability may be affecting the brain can appear in memory and attention. Many people begin to notice small lapses that seem harmless at first, forgetting where something was placed, losing track of a thought mid-sentence, reading the same paragraph several times before the meaning fully registers. Individually, these moments are common and often harmless. Everyone experiences them occasionally. The concern arises when they begin to occur more frequently or when concentration feels noticeably more difficult than it once did. To understand why this can happen, it helps to look at the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a region of the brain deeply involved in learning and memory formation. It is also one of the brain areas most sensitive to metabolic stress. When blood glucose remains elevated for long periods, it can increase oxidative stress within brain cells. This stress can influence how neurons maintain connections with one another. Over time, excessive glucose exposure may affect synaptic plasticity, the process that allows neurons to strengthen communication pathways during learning. Insulin signaling also plays an important role in the brain. Insulin receptors are present in several brain regions, including areas involved in memory and decision-making. When insulin resistance develops in the body, similar signaling problems may appear in the brain. Researchers sometimes refer to this phenomenon as impaired brain insulin signaling. This can influence how efficiently neurons use energy and how effectively they communicate during tasks that require focus and recall. Another factor involves inflammation. Chronic blood sugar instability can promote low-grade inflammation throughout the body, including within the brain's vascular system. Small blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrients to brain tissue may become less efficient, which can subtly affect cognitive performance. These changes develop slowly. Most people do not notice them immediately. But when memory lapses, brain fog, and mood fluctuations appear together, they may represent early signals that glucose regulation is placing stress on the brain. Silent sign 4. Afternoon crashes and sudden mental fatigue. The fourth silent sign often appears at a very predictable time of day. Many people experience it in the early or mid-afternoon. You may begin the day feeling relatively focused and productive, but as the afternoon approaches, concentration fades, mental energy drops sharply. Some people feel an intense desire for sugar, caffeine, or quick snacks just to regain focus. This pattern is often dismissed as a normal part of a busy schedule. However, in many cases it reflects a cycle created by unstable blood sugar earlier in the day. When meals contain large amounts of rapidly absorbed carbohydrates, blood glucose can rise quickly. In response, the pancreas releases insulin to move that glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells. If the insulin response is strong, blood sugar may fall more rapidly after. This drop does not always reach dangerously low levels, but it can fall enough to create a noticeable decline in mental energy. The brain reacts quickly to these changes. Neurons depend on a steady flow of fuel. When glucose availability becomes inconsistent, the brain begins conserving energy. Attention becomes harder to maintain, decision-making slows, mental endurance declines. The body may also release stress hormones to correct the drop in blood sugar. These hormones can temporarily restore alertness, but they often leave a feeling of fatigue once their effect fades. Over time, repeated cycles of spikes and crashes can influence how the brain manages energy. Instead of receiving a steady supply of fuel throughout the day, the brain is repeatedly forced to adapt to abrupt shifts in glucose availability. Recognizing this pattern can be important. Brain fog, mood swings, memory lapses, afternoon mental crashes. Individually, these symptoms may seem unrelated, but together they can form a pattern suggesting that blood sugar regulation may be affecting brain function. The encouraging part is that the brain is highly responsive to metabolic stability. When glucose levels become more consistent, many of these symptoms often improve as the brain receives the steady energy supply it needs to function clearly.